What's up, you guys? Welcome to episode 428 of the Established Run NBA podcast. I'm Mike Gallagher here with Drew Dinkmeyer to talk Christmas NBA slate recap, some takeaways, some big picture stuff. Really entertaining day. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas to everyone out there. Hope you guys had a great one. With me do so again, Drew Dinkmeyer. Dink, how's it going?
Oh, it's going great, man. Yeah, it's nice that on a NBA day that was challenged by the NFL, NFL playing Wednesday games, that the NFL games were not that interesting and the NBA games were very, very interesting. I love all sports, so I don't want to like pit the two against each other, but I'm tired of the NFL coming for the NBA shine, as LeBron was as well. But five pretty competitive games, some big performances by the present and the future of the league,
Mhm.
and I think that's great for the game of basketball. I think for a lot of there's many people out there who like to be critical of basketball who, from my vantage point, it doesn't seem like they watch a lot of basketball. This is a day that a lot of people who don't normally watch basketball do watch some basketball, and I think the games were great, and I think some of the star players were really on display in a fun way.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess kind of looking back, we had criticized the schedule that came out, not having OKC on there, the fact that the
Yep.
top team in the East, for the top six teams in the East didn't play, the top three teams in the West weren't on there. But it worked out, right? Like you got the star power out there. Obviously, four of the games were really, really good. And we'll talk about that. But yeah, and to your point, man, like I'm in two fantasy championships. I was obviously watching NFL with those games out there. My dad, bought a second TV out in the living room, so we could watch both games. And I will have you know that my dad's a way bigger NFL fan, but we had the NBA game on the big TV, just so you guys know.
Nice.
But yeah,
Nice.
it was really good. And yeah, those NFL games were really bad. But yeah, yeah. Anything that you just wanted to note about just does this? Do you think that they maybe are going to be more like? I think OKC is going to be there like every year now, like for the next 3
I
4,
think so.
like they have to be on there. But anything else? I'm just like we talked about this, and Wemby certainly. We talked about him maybe not being on there. Like I don't know about that. Like it feels like he's going to be on there every year now. Any
Uh,
thoughts on just like
yeah.
which teams kind of get first dibs? Obviously, Boston will still be there. Knicks are going to still be there. Um, but yeah, like the Wolves, they were probably a team that maybe borderline. The Suns, hey, they both won. Do you have any thoughts on like the hierarchy that maybe next year will or won't be on the slate?
Think it'll all continue to be star driven.
Mhm.
And so if we have, you know, Wembenyama will be on there. I think OKC will ascend into the
Mhm.
Boston territory of star. Boston has the historical franchise value as
Mhm.
well that has kept them there, and an extended run, right? It's been like a decade of Boston playing pretty deep into the playoffs. So I think OKC will get lifted into that range. I think Dallas and Luka will continue to be there. I imagine they'll make another strong playoff run as well. I think Jokic will still have kind of his presence there. And then, LeBron and Steph, it's sort of to be
Mhm.
determined on, do we continue to get more of LeBron Steph seasons? That's a question mark. And so I think those guys will continue. But I think if they're on, I think they will continue to be paired in this way. Like I think that's kind of the approach that we'll get. Anthony Edwards, I thought, after last year's playoffs, I thought you would say for sure he's going to be on there for the next decade. I'm not as confident
Yeah.
now with with the way the Wolves have been playing, but I think he should be. I think the question marks in terms of, I think Phoenix is pretty questionable to be on there
Mhm.
going forward. I think Philadelphia is pretty questionable to be on there going forward. Um, so I think those are the two teams that come to, like, if you had to tell me which two teams I think are most likely to not be on next year, I would say Phoenix, and I would say Philadelphia.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But again, all these teams that and then the next one will be Minnesota, right? Like the other ones feel pretty bulletproof, just because Joker's going to
Yeah,
probably win MVP
yeah.
again. So yeah, they're really really still, yeah, like the three teams that like have the best chance of dipping out, all one, for what it's worth there. Any other just sort of big picture Christmas stuff? Obviously I know a lot of people. I don't really want to get into it. Talked about the broadcast itself with the ESPN coverage, which I don't really want to get into. But anything else you want to mention before we kind of dive in on just how the day went from a presentation standpoint?
I just think nothing could be better than Victor Wembanyama putting up 42, 18, and 4 against the Knicks, and the Knicks playing really exciting, entertaining brand of basketball. Mikal Bridges, who was their big offseason
Mhm.
acquisition before the Karl-Anthony Towns trade, going for 41. Like, I think that just set the tone for the entirety of the day. And for me, it was almost like, man, we got that Wemby performance that because a lot of people. I was actually listening to Davis Maddock and Pat Mayo on Davis's Takecast, and Pat had some really impressive thoughts on kind of NBA ratings and how things have gone over time and different things. And one of the things
Mhm.
he had said is that like he doesn't watch as much NBA now, but he'll stop and watch every highlight of Victor Wembanyama when it comes
Mhm.
across the screen. And I think that in like fascination with Wembenyama is going to continue for the casual fans. And I think just him putting the league on display in that way was just incredible for the value of the league going forward and for interest in the league, because I think he's the most fascinating guy to continue to watch. So that for me, like it ruined my DFS day very quickly because he
Yeah.
was much more popular than I played him. But I was like, man, this is really great for the league. This is really fun to watch him show up in this way.
Yeah, for sure. And we could segue that with the most exciting game of the night, with LeBron James saying, "I love the NFL, but Christmas is our day." Um, what a game, man! I mean, just the way the Steph shot making. Like, you and I say the same thing. There's nothing better than Steph going off. He hits a freaking like sidearm heave corner three, and then a logo three basically that he needed to get both of them to have a chance. Gets them both to drop. Still come up short. We'll talk about the Austin Reeves play. I'm sure you're going to want to lay into Kaminga. Yeah, just we. I mean, we got to talk about. I want to talk about the Lakers first. 'Cause there's a lot more to talk about with the Warriors. Kurt had some really interesting comments, but AD goes down the 7 minute mark, and I was like, oh, how are they going to win this game? Actually, I bet Warriors live -2.5. Like, oh, they should be good. They're going to play Christian Coloco, Dalton Connect, D-Well. They're all banged up with this team. So like, yeah, I thought the Warriors were going to coast, but credit to LeBron, credit to really hit some big shots. The Warriors left them open so many times. This is like really big bugaboo defensively. But LeBron coming up big, 31 points, Austin Reeves game winner. How did the Lakers kind of pull this out? Another storyline was road wins, right? A lot of road teams had some big wins here. But what caught your eye on the Lakers getting a nice 2-point win in San Francisco?
It's sort of interesting to think of, but Golden State might, in terms of like good quality, in terms of caliber of opponents, right? Like if you lose AD against like Washington or something like that, obviously it's not going to hurt as much because it's
Mhm.
Washington. But in terms of like stylistic caliber of opponents, AD's loss versus Golden State might be the one that's most overcomable, because Golden State's not really challenging the rim
Mhm.
defensively. So all the things that AD does defensively that really kind of help anchor that defense are just less valuable against Golden State with the way that their offense runs. And then, the question mark was offensively, but Golden State's defense is just really, really struggling right
Mhm.
now. And the Lakers were able to get kind of, good, solid looks from 3 point range. And Austin Reeves was great. LeBron James was great. And they had enough. And right now, Golden State, uh, their defense has just been kind of in the tank. It was in the tank last year in games that Draymond Green did not play. It's been in the tank in a combination of two things that have happened over the last few weeks, month. One, D'Anthony Melton. The loss of D'Anthony Melton for the season has really hurt their kind of point of attack on ball
Mhm.
defense. They don't really have somebody that they trust in that manner to put out there for meaningful minutes. Gary Payton's the closest thing that they have, but they can't really play him for meaningful minutes. They go and acquire Dennis Schroeder. They hope that he can kind of fill that void. It's still early on that front. And then since Draymond got hurt with this like calf issue that he had been dealing with, their defense has fallen off in a pretty big way. And part of that is the games that he's missed, but part of that is when he's been out there, he hasn't been as impactful defensively as he was early in the season. And so the Lakers were able to generate enough offense with just really those two guys, with LeBron and Austin Reeves creating everything for everybody else. Connect hit shots, Max Christie hit shots, but those guys aren't creating for themselves. So it was LeBron and Austin Reeves kind of creating everything for those guys.
Yeah, and just the corner threes were so open. And just doing some quick math, in their last 5 games, or kind of guess what transition to the Warriors side here. In their last 5 games, they've allowed 41.8 points off catch and shoot, which would have been like by far the most allowed. The most allowed is 38.8. 35.8. So they are just giving it up. And this has been a really big weak spot for their defense. And it was kind of like they were kind of getting a little bit lucky earlier this year. Now they're not getting like unlucky. Like they're just teams are making them like they should. Catch and shoot threes are really good shots. And their defense is kind of built that way. And then I mean, I don't really think there's much to say with Steph, but I thought the biggest headlines here, as far as takeaways go, And anyone who watches the Warriors a lot and plays DFS and really knows the NBA well knows that the Warriors have been running this wacky rotation. And Steve Kerr got a really, really straightforward question saying, like, hey, what happened to the second unit? Obviously, Kuminga's minus 17. We'll talk about him turning his back, guarding Rui Hachimura in a second. But Kerr's saying, like, hey, it was really tough on these guys because I kept playing, 12, 13 guys. And
Yep.
he said that, quote, every game calls for something different. He said that the reality is we're searching, and he's always searching, but he ran a little bit tighter, and I think he wants to tighten it up. We had the comments from Steph Curry, like, call it 3-4 weeks ago, saying that playing this deep was a problem. So, I mean, yeah, how did they kind of get back on track? I mean, they were red hot. I talked about it for the first month of the year. They were the best team against the spread, and now they're just losing games all over the place, and they're losing them in like such different ways. So, what does kind of Kerr do here to kind of get? And then also one more point too, like the Kuminga stuff. Oh yeah, we're gonna start him. Draymond, bring him off the bench. We got a groove now. And then all of a sudden, oh no, now we want to play Trace Jackson Davis, who played pretty well.
Yeah.
But yeah, like where do they go from here after another really, really bad loss, 7-7 at home now?
Yeah, I don't have a lot of great answers. I honestly think they're going to have to make a trade.
Mm-hmm.
I think another trade. They obviously made the Dennis Schroeder trade, but I think this whole 2 timeline thing has gone on long enough,
Mm-hmm.
and I think the yo-yoing and flip-flopping with Steve Kerr with his confidence in Jonathan Kuminga has been a detriment to Jonathan Kuminga and has been a detriment to this franchise. And I think you can argue both sides of it. You can say Kuminga hasn't deserved to hold that confidence for a long period of time with his play, but I just think at this point, I think they probably need to move on and solidify a rotation and get something where people know what they're doing. I think the idea of playing things like meaningfully tighter and trying to play Steph and Dre heavy minutes and different things like that, I'm just very skeptical of their ability to hold up physically on this. And so I think one of the things that was working so well for them early in the season was that they were playing so fast, they were playing so aggressive, they were playing so many guys that they could play all out for that time that they were out there. And they had offenses that were really taking advantage of early in the season. I think, teams are fresh in terms of they haven't had a lot of wear and tear, but the preseason isn't really taxing guys' bodies a lot. So conditioning in short stints, I think, was questionable. And the Golden State Warriors were playing super fast, and they're playing this chase offense that it's constant motion offense
Yep.
that you're in constant chase defense on. And I think it was wearing guys out, and they were getting wide open looks, and Buddy and Steph were just annihilating, right? Now the league has kind of found their conditioning, found their footing. The Warriors are struggling to find their ability to play at that same level of pace, play with that same level of depth. And as a result, the playing field has been leveled a little bit. And so I think some of the advantages that they were creating early in the season were a little bit fraudulent in the sense that some of them were based on just the early portion of the season and them testing the conditioning of some of those teams. And some due to, I think D'Anthony Melton's a super valuable player for the way that they were trying to play, and his loss has been really tough to fill. Now they go out and acquire Dennis Schroeder. They're trying to fill that void, but that's going to take time. Like, you're talking about all these wide open threes that they're leaving. That's a combination of two things: defensively unaware players, which they have unfortunately a couple of that they've been emphasizing more of late. Kuminga, Trace Jackson Davis. Those guys are just defensively a little bit unaware in terms of where they get. The rotations are a little bit slower. It's a little bit sloppier. The vets who kind of know where to be are getting de-emphasized a little bit. Kyle Anderson specifically.
Mm-hmm.
And then secondly, Schroeder's a new piece. And so it's going to take time for him to figure out the defensive goals and where you're supposed to be and different things like that. And also the communication styles with players. So, I think Schroeder has been pretty good on ball, but in the past he's been a little bit less aware off ball. I think Melton's great on and off ball. And so they've really kind of lost that aspect of things. I think they'll get better with more reps from Schroeder, but I almost think we're at the point that they might need to kind of make a trade, move on from Kuminga, and just sort of like try to get another veteran piece in there that the coaching staff can trust in terms of rotations and keep consistency, because I think the yo-yoing is carrying a weight on the individual players. We've seen this with Kuminga for the last 3 years. He's had up and down like complaints and trade requests and different things like that. And I just think it's probably time to move on at this point.
Yeah, I agree. And then to your Steph point, they played him 36 minutes, and then the commentary after from Kerr is like, "Oh yeah, we basically have to sit him in a back-to-back coming up when they played the Clippers on Friday and somebody else on Saturday." So that was, and not even injured. They're like, oh yeah, we played him too much. We got to sit him down now. Because this knee, like
Yeah,
again, this knee tendonitis thing is no joke. He's going to be 37 in March. Like this is a pretty big concern there. So anything you want to add there? And then yeah, I mean we got to talk about the Kuminga play. You know,
yeah,
Austin Reeves drives down the left baseline, and Rui Hachimura rotates out for the clear out, and Kuminga turns his back completely, literally under the basket. Like, come on,
yeah,
man, you got to know time score situation, and whatever, leave,
exactly,
and you've got help on that side. Like, what? And it's a tough
exactly,
pass to make. Like, you can't. That's not an easy
exactly,
pass. Just leave him. So I don't know. Anything you want to add
exactly.
on that? Really, just really, really poor awareness from Jonathan Kuminga.
It was just a perfectly encapsulated representation of things that people don't understand how that contribute to winning or losing in basketball games, and like how you can have players out there that you look at the box score and you're like, they did nothing in this game. How were they a plus 14 or whatever? The Keon Ellises of the world, right? And you're like, they shot 2 shots. I don't understand. Like they weren't the guy that they was a primary defender. They didn't necessarily lock down or whatever. And it's stuff like this where time score situation, as you allude to. Austin Reeves is driving, for a game-winning shot with under 6 seconds left on the clock. The amount of time that's going to take for him to find, identify, deliver an open shoot pass to an open shooter, and for that shooter to catch and shoot in rhythm, you want that pass. You want that pass with under 6 seconds. Your
Yep.
primary goal as a defensive unit is to get a pass that's further away from the basket in those 6 seconds because it improves your chances of potentially winning the game. Not only the fact that he was driving baseline, and so the pass would have had to deal with passing over the rim, backboard, around, under, whatever. That takes more time, more
Yep.
challenging and whatnot. And so for Kuminga to turn his back there, to not let Rui just float to the 3-point line, to not bring help to press up, and then trust the defense behind you to rotate behind you, and trust them to force Austin Reeves into a difficult pass or a contested shot is just poor. It's just really poor situational awareness. And unfortunately, it cost them the game in this instance. And similarly, there was like really poor situational awareness for Rui
I
Hachimura
was gonna say that.
a couple possessions before. And like these are things that make a big difference in terms of winning and losing basketball games. And we can focus on all the highlights of Austin Reeves making plays late in the game and Steph Curry just shooting incredibly well at the end of the game and all these big shots. And that is wildly entertaining and great. And that is what ultimately, will drive all the highlights and the attention. But those little defensive miscues are what allow some of those big offensive plays to take place. And for Kuminga, there's been too many of those in his history. And unfortunately, all the offensive talent that he has gets a little bit overshadowed in terms of his on-court impact by some of these lapses defensively.
Yeah, and I'll say like they really like kind of cut too late. You shouldn't
Yep.
like you're basically like letting him. And there was so much help on the backside that like that made like no sense. But it made sense that they were just like, hey, Kaminga's going to screw up, and then they're good. Because he couldn't have pinched in. If he would have pinched, I think if he would have stayed on the baseline, Kaminga would have pinched in because it was right in front of him there.
Yep.
But I digress. Yeah. Okay. So let's move on to the next kind of good game. The biggest upset of the day as the Celtics lose at home. Again, losing streak for the Celtics here. Obviously, the stories here, I thought really two players. Tyrese Maxey was really, really good. And then the should have been Eastern Conference Finals MVP, Caleb Martin, just absolutely dagger after dagger, 7-9 from three. Jalen bounces after the game. They kind of left him open. Joe Mazzulla basically said the same thing, that they were, didn't want to, let Maxey and Embiid and those guys beat him. But yeah, biggest win of the year for the 76ers for sure. Certainly back on track. Got a long hole to dig out of here at 11-17. But yeah, does this? I guess the big story is like Philly live now to potentially climb up the standings and then be a title threat at this point, or a threat to the Celtics.
I mean, it's the old astronaut meme, right? Like always were in the Eastern Conference as long as Joel's healthy. If Joel's healthy, this team has a legitimate path to give problems to these other Eastern Conference contenders. Now, can Joel stay healthy over the course of the season? Can they do so over the course of a 7-game series? Question marks, legitimate question marks. But on any given day when Joel is healthy, they can play at the very top of the Eastern Conference. They're an exceptionally talented group. This is what we thought when we got the acquisition of Paul George to pair with Tyrese Maxey, who had taken that big step forward last year. You loved the Caleb Martin signing in the offseason as one of your 5 favorite offseason transactions, and Caleb Martin came up in a big way in this game. Seems to always come up in a big way against Boston, and they're a very that's why we were so excited about Jared McCain. Was
Yeah.
like, if this adds this other layer, now it looks like McKean might be lost for the season based on some of the comments that he made on TikTok and whatnot. But I think this team is very interesting if they can stay healthy. And there's no impediment to climbing the Eastern Conference standings. This is what I've said all season long. We said it when Milwaukee got off to the really brutal start, that it's just not that hard to climb the Eastern Conference standings. You go on a spurt where you win 7 of 10 or something like that, you're gonna climb into the top 7. Like, there's just not enough wins from the bottom, 6 or 7 teams in the conference to stop you. So can Philadelphia get on a run? We'll see. They're 7-3 in their last 10. They're up to 11-17. They're still outside looking in, but 17 losses is currently tied for the number 9 spot in terms of losses in the conference, and it's 13 losses to get to the number 6 spot. And that number 6 spot team is Miami, who has all this Jimmy Butler trade rumbles going on. So there's just so much room to climb, even though we're already 28 games into the season in the Eastern Conference, because there's a lack of long-term fortitude there for some of these teams. So yeah, they're a real threat. They're going to have all the odds stacked up against them in terms of they're going to have to go on the road. They might be in the play-in. They need Joel to stay healthy, all these different things. But when they are healthy, they are a threat for sure.
Yeah, didn't have Drummond, and they still ran 8, and Gabo gave him okay minutes. Kyle Lowry gave him okay, like everyone gave him kind of okay minutes except for Paul George. But yeah, like you said, they're definitely kind of live here if they could stay healthy. But Maxi's been playing really well lately, and his usage has really held up in Embiid games. To the Celtics side, really the headline would be Kristaps Porzingis gets hurt again. Just feels like every week he's getting an injury and not returning from an injury. Obviously, substantial history with missed games there. So there's that. Tatum coming off an illness tag, Jaylen Brown playing really poorly to start this game. Pritchard's cold again. Their offense is really struggling relative to Celtic standards. They're just 10th in offense in December as well. So yeah, anything. It's just kind of every team goes through slumps. We talked about the Sixers being dead, a month ago. It's just Pritchard's cold too. Pritchard's lost a little bit of steam after being like the best half court player in the NBA. I think since I tweeted that like a week ago, he's like really fallen off. Anything to this besides the Kristaps stuff, which there is something to for sure. But just Boston kind of going through a losing streak here. And then also Sean Grand had noted that they were down 16 in this game. That was their biggest deficit at home all year. So, there's a game of runs, yada, yada. So that stat struck me and really shows you how dominant this team is at home. And then one other stat, I think the stat was, this is from Sean Grand again. The Celtics have lost their last 2 Eastern Conference games at home. I think they were 38-2 in their previous 40 games at home against Eastern Conference teams. So yeah, anything to this besides the Kristaps stuff?
No, I think the Kristaps stuff is the only thing that's like meaningful in terms of long-term forecasting of the Boston Celtics. I think, as you alluded to, there's just lulls that teams go through during the course of the season. The Celtics are in one right now, and that's okay. But the offense is definitely going to be different without Kristaps Porzingis, and so these games that Kristaps Porzingis is leaving early, the games that he's missing, the offense is going to look different. He supercharged them in a way that took them from a team that was perennially in the Eastern Conference Finals and getting into the finals to a team that won the finals last year and won the finals handily and convincingly. So he is a big, big difference maker. His health is really important. It's been a big question mark throughout his career. The constant kind of nicks and bumps and bruises always worry me. I always get worried when guys who have a history of this stuff start piling up small things, because small things can turn into big things really quickly. Talked about this, at length before with other players during the course of the season. So I am concerned on that front with Kristaps Porzingis and with his health and with these things that keep kind of popping up of late.
Yep, we'll talk about Aaron Gordon in a second too. Another kind of storyline. A lot of injuries last night. Or yesterday, I should say. But yeah, like we said, they'll be fine. I don't really have any concerns. You still think they're like, you don't have the Cavs in their tier. You still think it's like clearly,
No.
yeah, okay. So I guess one team that's cut the gap to transition here. The Knicks are only 2 games behind the Celtics now, as the Knicks are on a 5-game losing streak. Mentioned that 2-game losing streak from the Celtics there. So yeah. obviously we got to start with Mikal Bridges. Unbelievably hot in December, 69, very nice true shooting percentage, one of the best in the league. The 3-point shot is going down. Pick and roll stuff, he's been running a little bit there. He's been on ball a little bit more. The focal point over Jalen Brunson, cat foul trouble as well, took over this game clearly. All is forgiven. The Knicks were like, get this guy out of town. You overpaid for him, which still may be true. But really, Mikal popping off and being, a huge, and he was like, if Mikal played like just okay instead of like fantastic, they would have lost this game for sure. So, what's up? Is Mikal like quote unquote back? Is this just positive regression from the negative stuff earlier? How do you feel about where Mikal's trajectory is going with this unbelievably strong December that's capped off by the big Christmas Day game?
Yeah, I mean, these numbers that we're now looking at 30 games through the season for Mikal Bridges look awfully similar to the numbers that we saw in Phoenix when he was sort of the superstar role player, right? Like the elite of the elite in terms of role player that you wanted as your third guy on the team. And obviously, it's hard when the cost of the elite superstar role player is 5 first round picks and swaps and all those different things, because the cost gets excessive, and that's what he gets compared to. But early in the season, he wasn't shooting with this level of efficiency. He's now shooting 50% from the field on the season. He's shooting 37% from three on the season. The one area that has not corrected, and it's a pretty small sample because he's just not getting to the free throw line at all, is he's shooting 66% from the free throw line. He's a career 84% free throw shooter, but he's only taken 27 free throw attempts this season in 30 games. That's the one area that I'd like to see some improvement there from Mikal in terms of challenging the rim. He's fallen in love with kind of being a mid-range, fade away kind of assassin, get into the lane and kind of just fade away. I'd like to see a little bit more trying to finish at the rim and try to get to the free throw line a little bit from him. But the 3-point shot has corrected itself. I think it was Jared Dubin who had noted this, that it might have been Tommy Beer. I'm not sure if it was Jared or Tommy. Some of these Knicks fans beats NBA talents. Sometimes I mix them up on Twitter, but I think it might have been Tommy who wrote that in the last like 2 months, a much bigger percentage of the 3-point shot attempts that Mikal Bridges has had have come from the corner as opposed to above the break threes. And that has corresponded with an improved 3-point percentage as well, which Mikal was always a lockdown, knockdown 3-point shooter from the corners. And he was taking too many from kind of above the break threes to start the season. So I think it's all good. I've long talked about how my closest friends are a bunch of Knicks fans and how I've had to manage their expectations during the course of the seasons. Yesterday was a fun day, texting back and forth with some of my Knicks fan friends, and I was like, "This team is just super fun and very different when Mikal Bridges is playing at a high level. They have more margin for error when Mikal Bridges is playing at a high level." And I thought he's obviously been doing this for about a month now, and he's been great. And if this is the guy that they have going forward, they're very live. And all my Knicks, preseason futures starting to look a little bit more in play. I need Cleveland and OKC to slow down a little bit in terms of best record in the league and over 53.5 wins and all the stuff I was hitting on the Knicks. But they look great. And, it was getting a home win against San Antonio on a noon start on Christmas. You would think like we shouldn't be celebrating this too much. But that was San Antonio with Wembanyama playing as well as Wembanyama can play.
Mm-hmm.
That's a pretty good team. It's not an NBA Finals level team, but that's a pretty darn good team when Wembanyama is playing at that level. So I thought it was a really strong take care of business in the face of adversity, given the way that Wembanyama was playing and just knocking down threes left and right, win for the Knicks.
Yeah, and to that point, like flipping to the Spurs, I mean, they got a lot to be excited about here, man. Like Wembanyama, we don't even need to talk more about it. Like if anyone watch this guy. He's a freak, man. 42 points, got to the basket a little bit more. We'd love to see that.
Yep.
Had 14 rim points. I think that might be a season high for him, or close to it. Obviously the 3-point shot was going. He's still been really, really strong there. The 4 blocks again, like he's just a freak. But Devin Vassell didn't have a great game, but 36 minutes from him. Jeremy Sohan's having a breakout season. Obviously, Chris Paul's been nice and steady. Stephen Castle will get better as well. So, really fun team. We talked about it. This team, if you took Wemby off this team, like there's no way they're in the Christmas Day slate. But yeah, really, really fun. And it's almost, I mean, they're 500. Like they're playing pretty good basketball overall. So yeah, they're a really fun team.
They're in the mix for the Western
Yeah.
Conference play-in. They're ahead of the Spurs, ahead of the Kings by 2 games right now. They're a half game behind Phoenix, Minnesota, and Golden State for the 8 through 10 spots. They're in it and viable. Their point differential on the season, -1.1, is the same as the Suns. -1.3 is better than the Lakers at -2.5. So like I think they're going to hang around this play-in conversation as long as Wembanyama is healthy throughout the year.
Yeah, they got a tough schedule coming up. They're at Brooklyn, at Minnesota, Clippers at home, at Denver, Denver at Chicago, at Milwaukee, at Lakers, Memphis, home. So we're gonna find out pretty quick if this team
Yep.
is gonna be pretty live there. Let's
Yeah,
go.
they've only had that's a good point. They've only had 12 road games of their 30 games so far, so
Mhm.
it's going to catch up in terms of the schedule. And that's another note for the Knicks. Only 14 of their 30 games have been at home so far, so they are starting to have a little bit more of a home friendly schedule going forward as
Yeah,
well.
for sure. So let's get to like the biggest story of the day from fantasy and all that stuff is Luka Doncic leaving the arena on crutches. Pretty big injury here. I mean, this is a great game. This looked like it was going to be a blowout, but really strong run in the fourth quarter from the Mavs. Yeah, Anthony Edwards looked like he was going to have a huge game early, then kind of went away a little bit. Missed a lot of like floaters in this game. Shot 11 to 24. But yeah, he was good. And then Julius Randle again, like the passing from Julius Randle has been pretty consistent. And Chris Finch talked about that after all, how they want to use him more as a facilitator. They got pretty good minutes out of Rudy Gobert, a couple really nice dunks on some rolls to the basket. And their bench was, solid overall. Josh Minot gave him some pretty good minutes there. But yeah, the Wolves have been perhaps the toughest team to have confidence in, especially because their offense has been so bad. But they got good offense yesterday for the most part, I would say. Dallas's defense has been very, very good over the years. So is Minnesota? They're kind of in limbo for sure. I don't think I feel strongly one way or another. They have the capabilities and the upside, but I think it's pretty clear that the cat trades in the short term is going to be a bad one. Anything you want to just note on? Again, just really tough to predict where the Wolves are considering their inconsistent play, especially on offense.
Yeah, I think the hope that we had for them was that they knew trading Cat was taking off some short term ceiling for some potential long term ceiling in terms of financial flexibility and opening up the books and different things like that. But the hope was that they would have added enough depth with Dante DiVincenzo and Julius Randle for Karl-Anthony Towns that they could kind of overcome that from a regular season perspective. The fit has been a challenging one so far. DiVincenzo hasn't played up to the same level that he played in New York last season. Julius Randle has admitted to having kind of a tough fit in terms of trying to figure out whether he's a scorer, whether he's a facilitator. I think ultimately this team, from an offensive perspective, if you're going to keep the starting lineup and personnel together, the best version of them is with Julius Randle as a facilitator,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's like let Anthony Edwards and Julius Randle operate as the guys who try to break down the defense and get into the paint. Perhaps dish the ball to Rudy Gobert and have some verticality there, but generally have Mike Conley and Jaden McDaniel spread out to the 3-point line, and then have Ant or Randall spread out to the 3-point line and have them be the secondary attacker after you've gotten to the paint, and that can create more sustainable long term offense. So I think just him having the switch flipped mentally from going from scorer to facilitator could do a lot for them, and I'm excited to see if that happens. But yeah, the Wolves are always a roller coaster. They've been a roller coaster for the last 3 years. They continue to be that way. We keep hoping that Anthony Edwards will offer some semblance of stability to that roller coaster as he grows, but it just hasn't happened yet in terms of that franchise. And I not to place that entirely on him, but just it takes time to kind of develop consistency and stability. And they hung their hat on the defensive side last year. I don't think they have the same level of talent to do that on the defensive side this year. So I think they need to hang their hat a little bit more offensively. And it would be great for them if they could get some more production from the Dillingham Minot group, so they could stop having to run these 8-man rotations so consistently. Because some of the hopes we had were depth would really win out for them. They haven't really hit injury stuff yet. And at some point, that stuff hits during the course of an NBA season. So that's my one knock on them is like, we've gotten to this point of the season. It's been a roller coaster for you, and you haven't really hit the health difficulties or struggles part of the season that most teams hit. So what are things going to look like from that perspective? But I think, a couple baby steps in the right direction for Minnesota of late.
Yeah, to their credit, Ant, Gobert, and Julius, besides Julius Randle's serious injury last year, they're pretty
Right.
durable. So they do have that
Very
on their
durable.
side.
Yeah.
Obviously, Conley's going to miss time for games. Nas been generally pretty durable as well. Dante
Yep.
in general. So they have pretty healthy players. on their team. So they got to right the ship. Their offense has to be better and attacking more. The last 2 games he's been getting downhill a bit more. I think that's huge. They've got
Yep.
to get that going there. They are so 3-point heavy, almost to a fault. They talked about how they were going to flip that. I think they've almost gone too far. I don't think they have the caliber to have that much volume there. So sticking with the injuries, let's talk about Luka Doncic and kind of where we're at. Obviously, the headlines are like, okay, Kyrie's going to be in a huge position for some big stat lines. Klay Thompson passes Reggie Miller. He'll be shooting the ball more. We saw Quentin Grimes, who I thought played pretty well in this game, picked up the Ant assignment and did okay in his minutes out there. PJ also didn't shoot it well, but we know he's a guy who could carry a bigger offensive load. Derek Lively on the short roll. Now that you don't have, now you could trap Kyrie a lot more. So I think Derek Lively in the short roll will be a bigger foundational piece for their offense. But yeah, with Luka Doncic out, besides and Spencer Dinwiddie will be kind of locked and loaded there. We did see Spencer Dinwiddie start that last game before Luka returned. So yeah, do you think Grimes did start the second half? I still think that Spencer Dinwiddie start that last game was because of Ty Lue, because Ty Lue's tendencies to blitz. So I still think Grimes will start most of the games, but yeah, all those guys will have to step up. Anything you want to add on where the Mavs go as Luka Doncic looks like he'll be missing multiple weeks with this injury?
Yeah, and I'm actually surprised you didn't bring it here, but this is probably going to remove Luka Doncic's eligibility from the MVP
Yeah.
conversation as well this year. So the MVP conversation will tighten up as well into
I
what
don't
is
think he
starting
was
to
even
look.
close to live though. Did you? I thought SGA.
He was top five.
Yeah,
He was top five on the straw poll,
he would
right?
have had to come
So
a
I
long way
mean,
to catch Joker and SGA to me.
yeah, yeah. No, I think it's a three-horse race now,
Yeah.
with Joker, SGA, and Giannis will have to manage his games as well to qualify. But ultimately, Dallas has played really well without Luka so far this season. They're 6-2 in the 8 games that Luka has missed so far this season, and their offense has not taken a big dip in those games. They've averaged just under 117 points in those games, 118.7 points in the other games. And we know the defensive personnel on the floor without Luka, you substitute in Grimes, that's a positive, improves as well. So I think they're deep enough to kind of withhold, but the schedule upcoming is very challenging. They go on a 4-game road trip at Phoenix, at Portland, at Sacramento, at Houston. Then they come home for Cleveland. Then they go at Memphis.
Oof.
So the next 6 games are brutal from a schedule perspective. And as we've learned in the Western Conference, it just takes like a period of time where you go, 2-4 in a 6-game stretch, and all of a sudden you're back towards like battling then in can I avoid the play-in type situation. And so I think the schedule is hitting difficult levels at a challenging time for them. But I feel like they've played without Luka enough this year that they've played pretty effectively as long as Kyrie is able to stay healthy. I think they still have enough for sure. That's one thing that they've done a good job at kind of building out the depth in the back end of this roster. Najee Marshall's played really well this year. Spencer Dinwiddie's played really well this year. PJ Washington has played really well this year. So I think there's still reason for optimism to be able to withhold this stretch. And maybe if you're a Dallas Mavericks fan, maybe you're thinking like, man, Luka, between the run last year, between the Olympics, this has been a lot that's been kind of on Luka's shoulders in terms of like international basketball qualifying and all that stuff. And maybe this is a gift in disguise. Maybe this time off will keep him fresher, kind of come playoff time. But yeah, Luka's always playing through stuff, and it's unfortunate that this calf issue is going to be one that he's unable to play through for the next few weeks.
Yeah, and I say this all the time, man. His left leg has so many injuries on it, man. Just every single had the left heel had it's just crazy how that dude's left leg just has so many injuries there. All right, let's wrap on the last game here. Suns get a big win. They really needed this one. Devin Booker is still out, and also didn't have Grayson Allen, and then Kevin Durant didn't have a great game, had his worst field goal percentage in the game this season. But the headline to me on the positive side, no turnovers. He had that 8-turnover game. They took care of the ball really, really well here. That was the headline, just 7 turnovers from the Suns. Just a solid game. Got good minutes out of Nurk. Bradley Beal was one of his better games of the year. I thought he played pretty well here. We talked about how he was in a position to maybe get this going here. So, yeah, the Suns, it was all doom and gloom. Their defense was 29th over their last, I think, 8 games going into this one. Anything to this? Like the Suns still got a lot of work to do. They were playing really poorly. Do you think that this game could catapult them into, going on a little bit of a run and to where we feel? I think their odds were like 20% to make the playoffs or something like that. It's been going poorly, but does this win mean anything for the Suns after they got completely throttled 2 games ago when Denver just undressed them in Denver, and then they win this one in Phoenix?
I don't think so, unfortunately. I think, look, every win is helpful in terms of potentially turning the tide. And when they get Devin Booker back, when they've had Booker, Beal, Durant together, they've been really good this
Mm-hmm.
year. So they just haven't had a lot of that. Hopefully, they can get back to that and they can get back to playing really well. The schedule is softer going forward, so I think that will help as well. They get Dallas at home without Luka, then they go to Golden State, Memphis at home, then at Indiana, at Philadelphia, at Charlotte, Atlanta at home, Utah at home, Charlotte at home, at Atlanta, at Washington, at Detroit. So it's a lot. It's a lot of road games, which is not as great, but it's a lot of Eastern Conference opponents, which
Mm-hmm.
is helpful. The thing about both Denver and Phoenix, to some extent, is Jekyll and Hyde performances throughout the season, and so I tend not. I don't want to give too much credit to Denver turning the tide when I've seen, or if Phoenix turning the tide when I've seen Denver have so many games this season where it's been like inexplicable how they've shown up. And this has been a season for Denver that has felt like things are ripping at the seams pretty much throughout the entire season. And that kind of felt this way here again in this game. They get off to a really slow start in the first quarter. Jokic looks like he's not playing with like the same level of joy that he's played with in the past. Looks a little frustrated out there, just generally with kind of his teammates. And it feels like things have been just kind of pressurized this season for Denver, and that they haven't really been enjoying things in the same way. Now you get Aaron Gordon, who's been battling through injuries, kind of back on it. We talked about how they're going through this 5 games in 7 days stretch around the Christmas holiday. Michael Malone talked about that last week and trying to manage the team through that. They don't have a lot of depth to be able to get through that. They're trying to manage Jamal Murray. They're trying to manage Aaron
Mm-hmm.
Gordon. So I just think this Denver team is unfortunately prone to no-shows. And I'm not saying that this game on Christmas was a no-show entirely, but it's just one of the reasons that I'm not looking at Phoenix like, oh, you took Denver's best shot, and that's a reason to catapult yourselves up emotionally further. I think it's just like sometimes Denver doesn't come out and play well. Sometimes it looks a lot easier against Denver than it should, and that's kind of how it felt this game. Denver had no answer for the Kevin Durant curl plays, essentially.
Yeah, the good news is that Aaron Gordon's injury doesn't sound bad. After the game, Michael Malone said that there was just some tightness, and they just wanted to be careful, and they didn't want to aggravate it and have it turn into something worse. So probably shut him down for a bit. I mean, you don't mess around with calf injuries, so
Yep.
I think he might miss like he'll be. It's not as bad as Luka's, right? Luka left in crutches. He did not have tightness. Luka like he's hurt. He's injured, I should say, and
Yep.
and Gordon's like hurt. So not a catastrophic thing. Peyton Watson's played pretty well this year, so they'll be all right. But yeah, certainly Aaron Gordon definitely
Their
helps.
schedule is really demanding physically. So they've got a back to back on Friday and Saturday. Then they play Monday, Wednesday, Friday, back to back next Friday and Saturday, with San Antonio home and home. Then another back to back Tuesday and Wednesday the following week. Then another back to back Tuesday and Wednesday the following week. Like all their back to backs this season, for the most part, are like in this next 2 to 3 week period. And so that's that's where you just worry about a team that feels like health wise they're being held together a little bit at the seams if things rip a little bit more here,
Mhm.
because they have 1, 2, 3, 4 back to backs before January 15th. So in the next 20 days, 4 back to backs. It's a lot of basketball.
Yep. And then last thing I'll say is I got to shout out Tyus Jones, man. He's been crushing. Ultra efficient. I think he's the most efficient guard in December this year on true shooting. So he's been really, really good. But that lack of size does really hurt them. And you would have thought that Denver and their size would have been able to make a bigger impact. But yeah, again, just nice win for the Suns. Kevin Durant has to play. Kevin Durant just if they take care of the ball, that'll go a long way to kind of let him play in half court and all that good stuff. So yeah, anything else to mention before we get out of here, recapping this fun Christmas day?
No, I think it was a great day for basketball. 5 competitive games, some great star performances: Kyrie Irving, Victor Wembanyama, Steph Curry, LeBron
Mhm.
James, Jason Tatum. Like I think that is basketball from for bringing in the casual spectator. That is the best version of basketball we can offer. It was great to see it. I'm excited we're entering another grind period, right? The
Mm.
schedule starts to grind again until the All-Star break, and then it will release a little bit, and then you go in these waves. So we're back in a grind period. It'll be really important to see how teams are able to manage themselves through this, but it'll be very interesting to see how the standings start to develop over the course of the next few weeks in advance of the trade deadline and the All-Star break.
Yeah, more back to backs. Those teams had a lot of nice practice time. The Pacers
Yep.
specifically look to really have capitalized on their practice time. So no more practice time now as the schedule really condenses. All right, promo time, and then we're out of here.
Yeah, first and foremost, for those of you who have not checked out our NBA product during the course of the season on the DFS side of things, we do have a sale going on during this Christmas holiday week. We're offering reduced prices on our weekly, monthly, season long price tags for the DFS NBA product. These are one-time purchase codes, so essentially you get a discounted rate if you're buying for a week membership. You get a discount rate for just that week, and then it would renew at the full membership if you choose to renew. Same with the month. If you do a season, you do get the discount rate for the full season, but you would be set to renew for the next season at the full price if you choose to renew, so on and so forth. So just a heads up there, but you can find more information on that on our on our subscribe page, establishedrun.com/subscribe-NBA. You can find all of the details on that Christmas holiday sale that we're running. You can see the discounted price tags on that sale. So we've gone from a weekly pass of $29.99 a week to $19.99, monthly pass from $89.99 a week to $69.99, and the season long pass from $349 to $319.99 if you're interested. No discounts on the props package. We're still trying to manage kind of the size of the props package. We're still really proud of the work that we're doing over there. It continues to be challenging to get bets, but the bets that we're able to release do really well. Projections are doing really well, allowing people to source their own bets when the projections are released. So we're really proud of the work that we're doing. If you're interested in checking out any of our premium content, establishedrun.com/subscribe-NBA. And of course, if you're listening along on Spotify, on iTunes, leave a rating and review. That helps us continue to provide this free content for you. And if you want to check out our YouTube page, Established Run NBA, where you can see video versions of these podcasts on our YouTube page, go on and subscribe over there as well.
All right, that's going to do it for this edition. Thanks for listening. Happy holidays again. Catch you guys next time.